Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end of day and end of week quick video for Friday, October 15th. Just wanted to send out a quick video on just some observations, and after a very event-filled and busy week this week, which ended very nicely, in terms of overall trading. Just wanted to kind of recap and a little bit of a look ahead, which again, members of Tribeca Trade Group, they receive a couple of videos from me over the weekend. Specifically a macro video where we kind of look at what all the indices are doing, and then some indicators under the hood, as well as a few other things that I tend to look at, and really kind of strategy for the week. And then the second video that we send out is single stock setups, and specifically doing the homework that kind of gets you ready for the week in terms of setups, and then we adapt over the week in terms of what we're seeing in terms of rotations and areas. I think, for example, one of the things that I took away from this week was that while the indices were not really behaving, and while there was still some overall selling pressure in the indices in the beginning of the week, there was really, we started to see some really good signals in growth areas of the market. Some of the market leaders, right? Not so much, the biggest companies that are out there, but a lot of growth stocks that had been acting very well, and just kind of accelerated to the upside once we kind of got to that middle stage of the week. And we had a couple days where those growth names really outperformed. And then we started to see more participation as the week wore on, and some of the other areas of the market that have been, teetering on breaking down, really kind of came in. Semis were one thing that stood out to me. I tweeted that out earlier in the week. I was like, hey, I don't like the look of this semis chart. This is something to kind of keep an eye on. And literally the very next day, we saw a rally back in the semis. So we certainly tested the bounds of possible breakdowns in some areas of the market. Coming into the week, there was more things that I saw that were moving sideways than anything else. The leadership was quite thin, mostly energy, financials, and select growth names, as we mentioned. But that really broadened out, and some areas of the market like industrials, materials, those needed to start from someplace. So from going to kind of sideways to weakening to really showing some strength, and a couple other areas too, which we're going to get into. Risk disclaimer: of course, everything that we're going through here is for information purposes only. Here is the week's performance. Some always just to kind of go through the actual performance rather than what you observed just by looking at the charts and so forth. But look at the solar names this week. We haven't seen that in a while, where clean energy outperformed more of the traditional energy, right? XLE, which has been has had really strong performance for the week. Your oil and gas names were actually flat for the week. Banks were actually, believe it or not, KBE, KRE were either flat or down a little bit. But it's kind of startling. And then when you look at something like financials, overall financials, XLF, they were much stronger. Also strong for the week. Metals and mining, blockchain, which got a big lift today. Blockchain stocks. There was some separation there depending on what you were looking at in terms of oil stocks, because oil services was up 4.3%. Steel was up 4% for the week. REITs, materials, we just mentioned those. Consumer discretionary, and there's the semis in there too, and also pretty good performance out of international, specifically a lot of some international developed and some international emerging markets too. I see a couple different areas of emerging markets in there, and then I also see some country-specific international developed markets that did pretty well. So let's kind of start with we'll do a quick overview of the indices, just to kind of see where these things are out. But the S&P, right, which is where we always start. The one thing that I noticed was that you had a lower high here, and we were hoping that we were going to build off of that. We got back inside value. Also, I saw this from, I'm not going to steal this from her. Helene Meisler mentioned this, that the overall, this looked like a head and shoulders pattern. But when you actually look, it's one of those funny pictures where sometimes you look one way and you see one thing, one image, and then you look at the same picture a little bit differently and you see a different image. So here's possibly, head and shoulders, which a lot of people were looking at, left shoulder, head shoulder, right shoulder, and then you didn't have your breakdown. But if you look at the picture this way, or the image this way, you actually see an inverted head and shoulders and a neckline right here. So anyway, kind of interesting. Maybe a little bit abstract there, but I see it for now. But yes, we managed to overcome. We were so far away from that 50-day moving average, and it's crazy what difference just a few days can make. Right, and we got back above that 50-day moving average, and I think overall that's a great way to end the week. All right, we are still in value for the month, but again, I think overall pretty darn good. We could look at the Qs or we could look at Nasdaq futures, but those made it. That was a little bit deeper below the 50-day moving average, but same thing here. Made a little bit of a lower high. Different type of pattern here, but bottom line is we got back inside value, a hair under that 50-day moving average, but nice strength today and outperformed. What about those small caps? Everybody's looking for a breakout here. Nope. Sorry, I should have waited for the screen to adjust. But started the day very strong and gave it back. So listen, I know everybody's looking for the breakout here. And it could be a breakdown as well. We just don't know yet. And do we need to see the small caps break higher? No, I don't think so. It would be nice to see some of those areas of the market, but we just may not get it. And if you look at the components of the IWM, while there's 2,000 names in there, take a look at some of the names in there, right? Always with an ETF index, make sure you know if rather than just say, hey, I'm going to go long or I'm going to short this ETF. Make sure that you agree with what you're doing in terms of the components, because when you look at the IWM, you may not want to necessarily go long some of those names. If you look at, like, let's say the top 50 names that are in the IWM. All right, and then last but not least, Dow stocks. They actually are looking really decent here, above value now for the month, and above all the moving averages as well. So I looked at that a couple times, and I think it was yesterday the Dow stocks outperformed. So yes, a little bit old school, but hey, you might actually see some leadership out of this group. Let's just talk about a couple other things here. A couple ETFs that are a little bit underperforming because of how they're structured, because they hold futures contracts. But I think very interesting what's going on in the commodities world, right? So DBC, which is kind of a little bit of everything. There's oil, there's crude oil, there's nat gas futures contracts in here. There's also things like there's also some agriculture commodities in here too. So it's a little bit of everything breaking out. And also, if you want to just look at the base metals, look at the move in the base metals. This ETF is just copper, aluminum, and zinc. Those have been absolutely on fire and have just gone vertical here. Copper was one of the, I would say, chart of the week, one of the charts of the week. Very, very strong performance out of copper, and things like FCX and SCCO really went up decently. Also, if you want to look at some country-specific ETFs that are a little bit more exposed to commodities, if you look at Canada, for example, which is EWC, this is breaking out. EWZ looks like it's bottoming. Brazil, also possibly an inverted head and shoulders down here. A little bit too early to see that, but I think strong looking. Also, another one that I know everybody looks at EEM, but look at FM, Frontier Markets, right? Breaking out too. So this is countries like a couple countries in Africa. I think Vietnam is in this ETF as well. Very strong. When we look at U.S. sectors, right? Of course, XLF, XLE were strong coming into the week, but look at the financials. They're back to new highs, right? And nice performance from from names that reported this week too, right? We're going to touch upon that in just a second. How about this one? Consumer discretionary. Now, a good chunk of this ETF is Amazon and Tesla, but very, very strong, and just like that, out to new highs, right? So that's that's a pretty good sign, right? When you see consumer discretionary break out, in my opinion, like that. So locked in a range for a while and kind of slow moving, but really accelerated to the upside the last couple of days of the week. But yeah, I mean, really, really bullish looking chart right there for consumer discretionary. Also, what about the transports? Right, transports trade I have on took some profits in this today. I'm looking for this ultimately to get up to that 262 line, but transports are acting better. I mentioned a little bit of industrials, right? So back to kind of sideways for these, but better than breaking down. Same thing with semis. Nice hold of the 200-day moving average, and so far just a nice bounce. Materials also more sideways, and we'll kind of end the sector review with the industrials. With tech, which also got above the its 50-day moving average. Your larger tech, obviously. All right, so and then just to that's a quick glimpse of macro. Right. Of course, this weekend, what we'll do is we'll drill down to some of those single stock movers. And like I said, a lot more participation going on now. The McClellan summation index, had a 10-day bullish moving average crossover, which I showed in the room earlier today as well as yesterday. And so when we start to kind of look at some of the names participating, of course, we're going to have a big number of earnings reports in the next couple weeks. And I think, that's where I'm going to be concentrating some of my attention on is what names are going to act really well after earnings. And we've already got a few, even though we just got started with earnings season. But one of the first ones that reported was Fastenal. Right, this is a maker of a lot of components, and really nice performance post earnings. UNH also had, a really good earnings report, good earnings reaction. Right, so there's a couple, and then as the week went on, specifically we saw Alcoa, today break to new highs on really strong volume. Chart looks really good on a weekly chart, right? Getting very close to getting a breakout of where we were back in 2018. Schwab had a nice earnings reaction, right, out to new highs here, and then finally Goldman, right, nice moving back over the all the moving averages and not exactly extended. All right, so looking pretty good there. All right, so that's it for quick video for the weekend, and like I said, really nice in terms of the amount of trading opportunities, and we certainly took advantage of that at the Tribeca Trade Group, and we'll be very focused on some of these names that are going to be reporting and the earnings reactions, because that's mainly what counts. Is what we want to see is what the reactions are to those earnings reports, and if the institutions are going to be buying them after they report, right? So if they're kind of underpositioned in some names and they really start to accumulate after the company reports earnings. All right, guys, have a great weekend. If you're not a member of Tribeca Trade Group and you want to see what it's all about, you can go right to my Twitter handle, and the link is pinned to my profile, or you could go right to tribecatradegroup.com. Thanks, everybody, and have a wonderful weekend.